Right, so the 2020-2021 season preview-ish list continues. We're up to the Carolina Hurricanes. The Carolina Hurricanes, it really depends on how you look at it. So last year, they get to the conference finals. It was unexpected, unless you know their history. Their history is they don't lose in the first round. And then this year, they lost in the first round. So, yeah. Carolina, they lost in the first round to Boston in 5, and that's after last year they lost to Boston in 4. Apparently, it's a bad matchup for Carolina. Now, when you look at the grand scheme of things, I do think Carolina has a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the future. Boston, on the other hand, we'll get to Boston at a much later date. Keep in mind, I'm doing one for each team in the NHL, step by step. This started with me doing the videos on the 7 teams that didn't go into the play-in round. I did all the play-in teams, and now I'm doing the teams that lost in round 1. So I'm working through it in that fashion. Of course, the general manager for Carolina is Don Waddell. This is where the pressure starts to rise on Don Waddell. Now they need to show improvement next year. They need to show that they're going to remain in contention. Coach Rod Brindamore, Rod's one of the best coaches in the NHL. I believe that. And I think he's really good with the players. I think he's really good just in general. I know he got in some trouble for being honest about how he felt regarding officiating. And I kind of wish that would go away. I understand why the NHL has the fines for, bad talk and officiating, but I think there should be some allowance for at least venting frustrations here and there. It just seems disingenuous to tell everybody just to not say anything. So when you look at the top 6 for Carolina, it's really impressive and it's young. And Jordan Staal may very well find himself still being the number 2 center in all this. But top 6 projected, Svechnikov, Aho, Teravainen, absolutely fantastic. Dzingel, Trocheck, and Necas. Necas had a very good rookie season. Look for him to step up more next season. And again, Staal may find himself being the number 2 center. Trocheck could find himself being the number 3. But this is a team that's definitely in pretty good shape. So while their forward group is really solid, their defense is pretty good too. Slavin, Hamilton, Shea, Pesce, that's your top 4. Remember, they got Jake Gardiner as the number 5. And Bean. Where's Jake Bean going to fit into this lineup? Is Jake Bean going to take that step next year? Does that allow them to trade a defenseman if he's ready? Because this is a team that there's been rumors for over a year now that one of the top 4 defensemen could find himself being traded. Pesce's usually the one that's rumored, or Hamilton. I will go ahead and say with the year Hamilton had, Hamilton's not going anywhere. So would it be Pesce? Because they just brought in Shea. Slavin's not going anywhere. So whenever I see any kind of trade scenario where somebody's like, well, if they trade Slavin, I'm like, well, okay, I'm not even reading the rest of that because that's not going to happen. And this is a very deep defense. This is why when you look at their UFAs, they could afford to lose both guys. And I don't even have Trevor Van Riemsdyk on the board because I don't even know if Van Riemsdyk factors into this at all. Good, very strong depth on the blue line. Their goaltending, that's where the question mark still is for me. And Mrazek and Reimer, both good. But are either of those guys going to be a goaltender that gets you to a Stanley Cup should the rest of this roster be ready? And that's where I have a serious question. And then the other question becomes Nedeljkovic. Nedeljkovic is 24 years of age. He's put up good numbers in the AHL. Are you going to give Nedeljkovic a chance to be one of your top 2? Because at some point, he either gets that chance or you're going to have to trade him. And so I do wonder, and again, because Nedeljkovic, I think, is going to be an NHL-level goaltender, and I say I think because we just don't know. Until a goaltender reaches the NHL, you have no idea what to expect from them in their career, really. Unless it's a blue chipper like a Carter Hart, for instance, in Philadelphia. But with Nedeljkovic, we'll see. Now, Mrazek and Reimer both at times this year looked very good, but at times during the playoff run, again, you're looking for that goaltender that can steal you a series, and I don't know that Carolina has it. I don't know that Carolina has that. Now, cap space is going to be an issue as well. $9.15 million in cap space, which is why the players who are making their exits, it's highly likely that they're on their way out. But again, Carolina is in a lot of trade rumors for good reason. Now, Justin Williams, very likely retired. He had said, I'm coming back. This is my last time. That's it. I mean it. That's it. But with the whole bubble situation and the world shutting down, will he say, you know what, I'd like to have a comeback again and have some kind of closure in front of fans, because that didn't feel like it was proper closure. So we'll see if Williams does retire and stay retired this time. Sami Vatanen, Joel Edmondson, both of them played well enough for Carolina that if Carolina finds a way with cap to keep one of them, and I would say Edmondson. Edmondson would be the one of the two that I would think is more important. Vatanen, I think, can be replaced with what the other guys bring, but I think Edmondson's physicality is important. Again, you may be looking at maybe Brett Pesce does find himself getting traded. It's the one that makes the most sense. Unless Brady Shea, unless they soured on him already and he sees himself on the move again. But it'll be interesting to see what they do. Restricted free agents, not a lot here. Warren Fogle and Hayden Fleury. And Hayden Fleury is another defenseman you can add to the list of many defensemen that Carolina has and potential trade bait. I really do wonder what they're going to do, because I think the amount of depth that you have in Carolina up front and on the blue line tells you they have to be good going forward. Well, we can look at Pittsburgh and Washington and say, maybe their best time is done. You look at this young core for Carolina and you think they're just getting started. Aho's just getting started. There's a 50-goal season in the offing. Svechnikov, there could be a 40-goal season in the offing. And Teravainen, if he's playing on a line with those two, he could get a 100-point season just being the one setting them up, and maybe 80 assists. There's a lot of potential offense there. And as long as the depth, as long as Necas, as long as Dzingel, and either Trocheck or Stahl, as long as they're providing good depth scoring, there's a lot of reasons for optimism if you're a Carolina fan. There are. Now, the draft, they have the number 13 pick. That's the one they got for taking on Patrick Marleau's contract that they then, of course, bought out. And that's not a bad return on cap space. Number 13 overall pick. And so we'll see whether or not Carolina picks a forward who's going to have the impact, or maybe this is where we end up seeing a goaltender go, right? So that's going to be interesting to see when they come up to the draft, whether or not they make that move and they take a goaltender. Because I don't think Askarov's going to last as long in the draft necessarily as 13th, but he might. This draft is really all over the place. I could definitely see Carolina taking a goaltender with that pick, which would be odd because, of course, that's the pick they got from Toronto. Toronto could use a goaltender like Askarov in their pipeline. So, again, we'll see how that turns out. They have the number 41 pick. They also have the number 54 pick, and they have the number 69 pick. Remember, I'm just going through the draft picks they have in the first 3 rounds. So again, it'll be interesting to see whether or not they can take that next step. I think they can. I was honestly surprised they didn't find a way to beat Boston. I kept waiting for this turnaround. I kept waiting for Brind'Amour to figure it out and take Boston. Because to me, Boston looked good, but not necessarily great, which was proven in the next round by Tampa, who have looked great. And so Carolina does have some work to do, but we'll see whether or not they make the deals in the offseason that are expected. The expectation is that maybe there'll be a change in net, and maybe one of their defensemen will be used in order to find that upgrade in goal. To which, of course, a lot of people might expect that they would be dealing with the Leafs and maybe making a move. And wouldn't it be interesting? I mean, I've joked about it, but wouldn't it be interesting if Reimer ends up back in Toronto after everything that happened there? And if Toronto picked up Matt Murray from Pittsburgh, Freddie Anderson ends up here. Like, that's just, there's so many names right in there. And the expectation is some goaltenders are going to move. And I would think Carolina, if you're going to make one or the other goaltender available, I would think it would be Reimer that was available. But one thing I will say, Don Waddell has done a pretty bang-up job with Carolina. He was given a decent roster by Ron Francis when Francis left, when they fired him. But I will say, he definitely fixed the goaltending, and definitely most of the moves made by Don Waddell have benefited the team. That number 13 pick, That was fantastic. They've got a first rounder they wouldn't have had, and of course that allowed them to trade their own first rounder to the Rangers. And so we'll see whether or not this team is as good in the future as they look right now. So what do you think about the 2020-2021 season for the Carolina Hurricanes, and how this team's going to look, and how many of these players are going to end up being on this blue line? Because you only have 6 defensemen, maybe 7 if you play 11 forwards. There's too many defensemen here. So which ones do they bring back and who moves out? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.